Welcome to the Explainer. So, we've all been there, right? You're hanging out, and suddenly one of those casual, seemingly throwaway pop culture arguments erupts out of nowhere. But what if we actually took one of those viral, completely off the cuff conversations and treated it like a highly serious sociological study? Well, that's exactly what we're going to do today. We're breaking down a passionate, hilarious, and honestly paradigm shifting debate between two people trying to settle a monumental question, a question involving two of the absolute biggest legends in Hollywood history. We're going to deconstruct this step by step and figure out who truly takes the crown. Let's dive in. Our story kicks off with a pretty wild, inciting incident. It's a birthday celebration, and one of the speakers decides to honor an actor's special day by dropping a massive, passionate, totally hyperbolic declaration. They literally just come right out and say, "The effing GOAT." No hesitation, zero qualifiers, just a bold, expletive-heavy crowning of their favorite actor. It's the exact kind of statement that's designed to either get enthusiastic high fives or, spark an absolute war. And in this case, it definitely sparked a war. Section 1, the premise. The Tom Hanks GOAT claim. Okay, to really understand the stakes here, we need to look at the exact claim being made. The speaker doesn't just call him a great actor. They call him the GOAT, the greatest of all time. Now, normally you hear this acronym thrown around in fierce sports debates, right? Like Jordan versus LeBron. But here, they're applying it to Hollywood. By throwing that specific label around, the first speaker takes this debate to a level of mock seriousness that absolutely demands rigorous proof. They aren't just saying he's beloved, they're claiming he is the absolute peak of the profession. When the second speaker tells them to, quote, "calm down, sweetie," the first speaker just doubles down hard. Greatest actor of all time, Tom Hanks. Section 2. The challenger. Enter Denzel Washington. The second speaker is having none of it. They immediately push back on this Hanks claim by throwing a massive heavyweight challenger straight into the ring, the one and only Denzel Washington. They're totally skeptical, telling the first speaker, "You jumping out there with that one, shorty." So the stage is set for a legendary tale of the tape. We've got a reigning champion, at least according to Speaker 1, facing off against a truly formidable challenger. But how do you actually measure this? I mean, what is the scientific unit of measurement for acting greatness? Section 3. The acting range metric, establishing the rules of engagement. To defend their Tom Hanks hypothesis, the first speaker introduces a very specific battleground, acting range. They state, "I love Denzel Washington, but Denzel has not shown the range that Tom Hanks has shown. This is the core of it. This is the controversial argument anchoring the Hanks supporters' whole case." Notice what they aren't talking about. They aren't talking about box office numbers, and they aren't counting Oscars. They are directly pointing out a perceived limitation in Denzel's repertoire compared to Hanks. That is a massive claim to make against an actor of Washington's caliber. And you know what? It requires some immediate, rigorous testing. Section 4, the role swap test, a hypothetical stress test. So to prove this theory of range, they engage in an absolutely classic pop culture debate tactic, the recasting game. The very first data point they use, Castaway. The Hanks supporter asks right out, "Did you see Denzel do Castaway?" The fundamental question on the table here is simply this: could Denzel Washington have carried that movie? Look at how they humorously break down the parameters of this specific role. It's so good. To pull off Castaway, you basically have to be stuck outside, on a beach in the middle of the water, accompanied by a literal volleyball, in a completely dead or isolated environment. When you actually list it out like that, it sounds completely absurd, right? But the fascinating part is the consensus they reach. The Denzel supporter says, yes, I could definitely see him do Castaway. And surprisingly, the Hanks supporter actually agrees. They both concede that Denzel could easily pull off these intense volleyball acting conditions. Okay, since Denzel clearly survived the island, the Hanks supporter escalates things to a second test case. Could Denzel Washington play Forrest Gump? They're using that classic stupid as a stupid does metric, mentioned in the source material, as their ultimate benchmark for acting range. Now, the Hanks supporter absolutely loves this movie, calling it a classic. But when asked if they can see Denzel playing Forrest, the Denzel supporter flatly answers, "No, I can't." So, let's track the hard data we've collected so far in this experiment. Castaway? Yes, Denzel passes with flying colors. Forrest Gump? No, he fails the second test. At this exact point in the debate, the Hanks supporter is feeling pretty victorious. They honestly believe they've firmly established a role that Hanks conquered, which Denzel simply couldn't touch. In their mind, they've successfully mapped the absolute limits of Denzel Washington's range. But then, we get the ultimate counterpunch. The narrative tension in this casual conversation just spikes right here. The Denzel supporter has basically been backed into a corner, but they are secretly setting up a final debate-ending hypothetical. They're about to flip this entire role swap test right back onto Tom Hanks, and let me tell you, they choose their weapon perfectly. Deliver this climactic question in your mind with total, absolute gravitas, just like the speaker did. Can you see Tom Hanks playing Malcolm X? Boom. This is the exact moment the Tom Hanks GOAT argument completely derails. It is literally the ultimate trump card in this highly specific debate about acting range. And honestly, this is perhaps the greatest part of the entire exchange. We get this immediate, hilarious, and total concession from the Hanks supporter. The second they process the weight of the question, the source audio just drops to, "Oh, okay, yeah, thank you," followed by a pretty emphatic expletive. They realize instantly, literally in real time, that they have been backed into a logical corner they cannot possibly escape from. They just admit defeat right then and there, saying Tom Hanks out though, and totally acknowledging the undeniable point that Denzel is the one. Let's look at the final score of this hilarious role swap experiment. Denzel passes Castaway, fails Forrest Gump, but undeniably, resoundingly succeeds at Malcolm X. Tom Hanks passes those first two, but completely and utterly fails the Malcolm X test. According to the internal logic established by these two debaters, the results are conclusive. Denzel takes the crown. Section 5. The social media fallout. The paradigm-shifting recast. Now that the debate itself is settled, the speakers naturally shift their focus to the escalating absurdity of the whole situation. They actually start to imagine the real-world consequences of a Hanks-led Malcolm X biopic. The comedic realization just hits them both at the exact same time. The first speaker asks this profound, incredible question. Do you know what the world would be like if Tom Hanks played Malcolm X? It's just a hilarious acknowledgement of how paradigm-shifting and utterly chaotic this hypothetical movie would be. The sheer absurdity of the casting choice completely overwrites the earlier technical debate about acting range. And that brings us to the final provocative thought posed by the source, wrapping up our explainer. Can you imagine what social media would do? The speaker notes they'd kind of want to see it happen just to, quote, piss people up. It just leaves us to imagine the sheer internet-breaking outrage it would cause. It's a perfect reminder that in the modern era, pop culture debates aren't really just about the art itself anymore, are they? They're completely tied to the cultural reaction, the social media fallout, and the delightful chaos of hypothetical scenarios. So what do you think would happen? Thank you so much for walking through this structured analysis with me, and I hope this explainer helped you fully appreciate the anatomy of this hilarious GOAT debate.